Okay, so I think we can briefly kick things off. First of all, I want to welcome everybody for joining. We will give it just a couple of seconds for everybody to join in. So to get maybe a bit warmed up, feel free to share where you're joining us from. I can start. I'm joining from Croatia today, from Zagreb. Some of you may have heard of the location. If not, look it up. It's pretty nice. Madalina is joining us from Romania today. Let's maybe see a bit we have in the chat going on. Okay. So let's officially kick things off. So first of all, thank you for joining the today's session. My name is Lucia. I am a senior customer success manager here at AppFollow, and I am joined today by Madalina. She is a subject matter expert team lead in Playtika. And Madalina, I'm going to let you share maybe a couple of short points about you if you want.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here and talk about what I love, which is customer success stories. I've actually been doing this for my whole career for over 8 years, close to 9. And I've been working in the gaming industry for the past 3 years. And I'm really excited to share with you everything that I know.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing. So for those of you maybe that are unfamiliar with Playtika, just maybe a couple of main bullets. So it's a pretty prominent game development company. Mainly the portfolio revolves around casual games, kind of social casino-focused games, kind of like solitaire. So I'm sure a lot of the games all of us have played at one point in another. So I feel like we're pretty familiar with the portfolio that we have. This session is being recorded, so we will share this with everybody at the end, whether you're here or you'll be joining later, or you're going to be just checking it afterwards. So the recording will be shared, so no worries there. And our topic for today, of course, is mastering player feedback and rapid responses to win loyalty. So our agenda for today will be what you can see here. So we're going to start with a bit of an introduction. I'm going to share just a couple of main bullets about the state of gaming today, the industry projections, forecasts, and so on. And we will then dive deep into our main topic, which is quickness in responses. So speed, feedback, why are they important individually and together, and also how that integration of feedback is important, how it will give you that competitive edge. We will then go to the kind of crisis and negative reviews portion of things. I feel like we are all unfortunately familiar with this. I think every app at one point or another will, reach this kind of crisis situation, negative influx. So we're going to be talking a bit about how to manage that. And then we'll be also talking a bit about the targets, KPIs. I think also a lot of us are very target oriented, definitely have all of the KPIs we're looking to hit. So we'll be talking a bit about how to measure what we are actually doing. And our final topic will be maybe a bit of a controversial one, but definitely a very popular one, which is AI and human touch, how they work in sync, what are the pros, what are the cons, and so on. And we will then wrap up with a bit of a Q&A. For Q&A, I do want to mention, first of all, thank you to everybody who have submitted the questions. These are the ones we will be talking about first. I've left them in the exact same format, so you guys that have submitted them, you know which ones are yours. But throughout the session, if you will have anything else pop up, feel free also to just send that in the chat. We will be covering all of the questions. If by any chance we won't have the time to cover everything, we will definitely be reaching out directly to cover all of the questions that you guys have had. So feel free to share whatever is on your mind. Okay, so now that we are done with this kind of formal part and the introduction, let's officially kick things off. So as I mentioned, I want to just share a couple of bullets when it comes to gaming as industry, how it works right now, what the status is. So I think a lot of you are probably aware that it's quite a chunky big industry when it comes to Play Stores. In 2024, it has grossed around almost 250 billion. In 2025, the projection is almost 285 billion. So it's definitely a growing industry. The forecast and the trajectory is exactly the same for the upcoming years as well, which on the one hand is great. On the other, it can also potentially be a bit, problematic and challenging to kind of get your piece of the pie in that whole story. So we'll definitely be covering that portion and how you can do that in the best way. With the size of the industry, of course, it's natural that there's quite a big volume of player feedback. So in 2024, there was almost 1.5 billion reviews that were left in both Google Play and Apple Store. This naturally indicates that the players are quite keen to share their feedback. They want to share what they like, what they don't like. And this sometimes can be an issue if it's negative feedback, but it's always an opportunity to understand what the games can benefit from to improve for the future. Now, when we tie the engagement of the audience with the size of the industry, it's natural to kind of conclude that the expectations are definitely rising. So it's not that easy to, get your players to stick with the game, to keep them engaged, to keep them play for the years to come. I think this also, it can be tied to any other app that's out there. It's great that the industry is big, but then, as I said, it makes it difficult to, keep that competitive edge all the time. So when we're talking about the expectations from the players, there are two, of course, main things we'll be talking about today, which is, as we've seen at the beginning, the quickness in the response and the feedback they are actually sharing. And here I actually want to initially hear your feedback, Madalena. What would you say? Why is quick response, why is quick reply to our users critical for retention?
Honestly, in my opinion, fast responses and the time that it takes for us to actually get back to the player can make or break the relationship that we have with them and their overall experience. Usually, players don't just want the support that they receive, but they also expect it to be now. And it's understandable. If you're stuck in a game and you don't get your rewards, or maybe you hit a bug and you're not able to play anymore, you don't really want to wait for hours or days to finally get a solution to what's going on. So that kind of delay can really sour the overall experience, and in some cases, even if you really really love a game, it takes only one bad interaction or a very delayed reply to make someone walk away completely. So that's why I think that speed and the timely manner in which we reply back to our players is crucial. And again, it can make or break the relationship in the end.
Yeah, and I would absolutely agree. I think especially when you consider that things are happening very fast today. There's a lot going on. We're not just talking about your apps in this case, but overall, when we're talking about, as you can see stats here, a delay of almost 5 days or almost 2 days, you've kind of lost them. The point is, to keep your users engaged when you kind of have them, and that time span and attention span has really reduced in these past years. So, it's very important to kind of catch them and keep them engaged, whether if it's engaging with their positive feedback or with their negative feedback. It's definitely important to kind of, take the opportunity when you have it. As you can see, the kind of top performance in the industry, it's about 3-hour response time. This is incredibly fast, and it's a really, kind of best in class result that they will have. I do want to share, from our point of view, what we will always recommend to our customers. If you're below 12 hours, ideally 6, you're good to go. It's still not the same system as it is with ticketing, but the faster you are, the better it will be for you, of course. Now, speed is one thing. Feedback, of course, is another thing. From my point of view, only being quick will not give you that kind of ideal result. You definitely want to tie that to the actual feedback. Why I'm saying this, if you just focus on the quickness and responses, but you're kind of leaving that feedback out, you'll probably find yourself in that loop of always covering the same topics, and it's going to be much harder to not just change your user's opinion, but also to improve the overall performance, app reputation, brand reputation even, and so on. Now, with that being said, and before I move on, Madalena, I know you guys work a lot with feedback and reporting, and that part is pretty important for you. So can you tell me a bit more about what that process looks like for you? How do you integrate player feedback into your internal development?
Sure. So integrating player feedback is actually one of the biggest parts of what we do. It's not just something that we collect and store away. We actually treat it as live input into both our support strategy, but also within the game development. So feedback is not just background noise. It's actually the roadmap in itself. And a lot of the developments that we've had along the years came from direct player feedback. Uh, Fortunately for us, our players are super vocal, and we really love to hear their thoughts. And they will often spot trends or bugs in game that we didn't spot in the beginning, and they will flag it for us and they will let us know. So the way that we integrate it and how we get it to be live is mostly on our side. We created very good, let's say, support group or connected system where we have teams of product and the development team, and we get the feedback to them as fast as possible after it comes directly from our players. And this way, we kind of tighten the gap, and the feedback gets to them very fast. So the developments are done quite impressively fast, if you ask me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think it's a fantastic example of how to kind of tie and close that feedback loop overall. One of the issues I feel like most teams will at some point come across will be maybe support teams or teams that work with customers will have the feedback, but then there's the issue of actually, getting that kind of come across to other teams which are more responsible for the resolution. So what you've described with that groups is a perfect example of how to reduce that noise and how to get to the issue, but also then to resolution a bit more quickly. With that being said, would you have any tools that you would recommend that helped you guys in achieving this?
Yes. So, when you have a very big inflow of reviews of player feedback in general, it becomes difficult to kind of sort through it and see exactly what is feedback and what is just suggestions or regular complaints. So something that has been an actual game changer for us was setting up tagging in our support platforms, and that auto categorizes the feedback that we get. And this way it's easier for us to actually see trends and see where the bigger need is, so we can get to that faster. So that, again, that was a very big game changer for us. We've managed to, again, spot issues, but also very, very important feedback faster, because we were able to see it in a trend and not just as just a complaint in a pool of other complaints.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely agree with that. And I think we've gotten actually a similar question around that, kind of how to filter through that noise and have that appropriate categorization system will definitely help here. Having like a full picture of what's been going on and understanding then the trends, which the consistent categorization will allow you. This will give you then a better understanding in what might be a new issue, what's old, what we know, what we don't know. So that's definitely a big, big advantage in the whole process. With that being said, I do want to also share with everybody that has joined us today something that can be quite helpful if you don't have the time, manpower, or whatever else, maybe even the will to set something up internally. We do have a system. Let me just stop presenting so I can show you. There is a system within AppFollow you can specifically refer to. Why do I want to mention this one specifically is because it's definitely the easiest and the best option to get quick insights and understanding what's been going on without you actually having to do anything. Let's just find an appropriate game to show this. Sorry, just give me a second. There's always, of course, an issue when we need to be showing something. I think my connection is not the best today. Okay, so then let's use this app. It's just an example. Of course, when you have your apps integrated, it's a much smoother process. This is just a demo account. But essentially, so what your semantic analysis will allow you, it's basically a ready-to-go analytics that you don't need to do anything in. So you don't have to set up any kind of internal automation, tagging, categorization system, rules, manual application, anything like that. you will have that immediately available within the system. So for teams that are looking to get something really quickly, whether if it's maybe a crisis on their hand or they just don't have the time to build something internally, this will be a really good tool to do that. The reason for that, as I said, you have something that's already available. You don't have to do anything. So for whichever app you choose, you will have this ready to go. So we have this kind of categorization based on the four main bigger categories. And then for each of them, you would usually have, let me just, okay, let's go here. So for monetization, for example, you will have this kind of subcategorization. Do keep in mind, based on the game, of course. Actually, let's maybe try a different time frame to maybe just kick things off a bit. Okay, so you can see, for an example, here, for each of the categories, you will have that subcategorization. So we can really go into the details, not just for the category, but for the overall specific topics. And then for each of them, you even have additional stats. For example, how many reviews have complained about a specific topic? What was the overall sentiment for these reviews as a group? What was the average rating? Have we managed this or not? So have we replied to these users in any way, or we kind of left them hanging? So this will give you a really good insight into that whole portion of things. And my kind of personal thing, to be honest, is the summarization. This is usually, one of the things that also can take a lot of time, especially if you have a lot of reviews coming in. It can be quite lengthy to read through everything, understand everything, and so on. So the summarization will basically help you with that whole process. And you have a lot of, sub options here, again, depending on how detailed you want to be. So this is absolutely something I would recommend for teams that are in need for something quick and easy, but also fairly detailed. For those of you that use the tool, I think you know quite well by now that there are all of other kind of options and systems you can use when it comes to AppFollow. So this is just kind of the easiest one, but there are definitely other options you can use within the system. Okay, let's go back to our deck in this case. And just to come back to where we were. Okay, so I also did touch upon a bit on the topic of the crisis while going through the sentiment analysis. This is usually where teams will kind of understand the value of feedback integration and what it means and how it can be beneficial. So let's dive a bit into that topic. Ideally, you want to, of course, have this kind of consistent, consecutive reporting. I feel like teams usually understand that when they kind of face their first crisis and then they realize, okay, we should maybe do this consistently. And then, of course, you're going to pinpoint the crisis and negative feedback much more quickly. Now, talking about crisis overall, Marilena, what would you say, like in your case, I know you guys have definitely had that in the past. What would be the first step you would recommend for somebody that's in a crisis to take?
So naturally, the first move that we take is to pause, because when a crisis hits, everything moves very fast around you, and of course on the screen where the reviews are piling up, and it's very hard to get the full picture if you don't pause and look back a bit from above to see exactly what's going on. So because the wrong move that you don't want to make is to react blindly, and we cannot really afford to stay silent either. So I think that's the best thing that we need to do initially, right? So pausing and then seeing exactly where this comes from. After that, the best thing to do is syncing up across the teams before you even go out with a reply. Getting the feedback from support, from the reviews, from communities, and also discussing this with the developers to see if they spot any trend. Just to make sure that, again, we are all seeing the same thing and speaking the same language when it comes to whatever is going on at that time. If it's a bug and it's an actual issue, we first confirm what is broken and how many players are affected by that specific situation, and what was the impact, what are they saying, how impactful was that specific situation for them. we try to understand exactly what sparked it mostly. After that, we go into kind of a proactive communication mode. This is how I like to call it, because even if you don't really have a solution yet, you at least understand the problem and you know that it's a problem. And again, you cannot really afford to stay silent, because one thing that I learned in my experience is that people really appreciate you taking notice of what's going on, even if you don't have like a clear resolution yet. So again, we go into proactive communication mode and we communicate the fact that we are aware of what's going on, and that someone is already on it and is trying to fix it. I believe that builds trust and connection. And we've actually seen a lot of great results coming from this, where we've had players who initially were, very frustrated with the situation, because it can be frustrating to face any sort of issue in the game. But that frustration quickly turned into appreciation of the fact that we were open and transparent. So again, just to sum up everything that I said, I believe that the best thing that you should do is to again break the silence and tell them that it's okay, we made a mistake maybe, but we are on it and we're fixing it.
Yeah, and again, this is kind of exactly what we recommend as well to our customers when they come to us. They ask the same question: we have this issue, what should we do, how to handle it? It's absolutely the exact same thing we would recommend. As we've kind of seen at the beginning, expectations are rising, attention span is much shorter, and you need to act. It's okay to not have a solution, but to leave them kind of in the dark and in silence, it's definitely the worst thing to do. And do keep in mind, the best kind of option is, as you also mentioned, tell them, we know, thanks for sharing, we're going to come back to this. And then once you actually have the resolution, you can also just update the users on what's going on. And this is how you really build that, trust, reputation, how you actually keep them, how you also make them show that you are acknowledging the feedback, you're listening to what they're telling you. So it's definitely kind of the best approach that that should be taken. A bit on the stats, you can also see just here on the slide. I wanted to pull them. I felt like they were quite, impactful and important as well. The way you will handle your crisis can impact how quickly you will recover from it. If you do exactly what Madalina has described, they do. This can increase your recovery time by, or actually reduce the recovery time by 2 times. So it's quite a big impact you can have overall on the reputation, on the ratings you will receive, the feedback, and so on. And one also very important chunk, you're gonna, keep that user base present, even if they have an issue. Everybody has issues. It's a completely normal thing. The way you will manage these issues is where you will actually distinguish yourself between a really good company who takes care of the users, understands them, listens to them, and the company that doesn't really care. And this can then consequently reduce your churn by 30%. Again, a very important number and very important metric. I think all of us are quite, focused on churn overall in one way or another. So it's a very important thing to keep in mind as well, how impactful this can be. And just one last point here, you can also see what the difference is between the acknowledgement and the engagement with the audience for top performance, and on the average, it's almost a 50% change. And that's a really big number that can have a really, really big impact in how your users will perceive you. Keep in mind one important other point: how you engage with your audience, and if you engage at all, is also important to the stores. They like the apps that engage, they like to see engagement, and it will be one of the points that will kind of give you that better overall ranking and position. Not the whole story overall, but an important chunk of the story nevertheless. Okay, so let's talk a bit about the targets and the KPIs. You can see here when we talk in the context mainly, of course, from AppFollow point of view and the metrics you would always suggest for users to track. The reply rate and reply effect are definitely the two that we would suggest that will be beneficial to see how things have been going on. But before I move on, I do want to ask you, Madalina, which other KPIs or targets would you point out as relevant for your teams?
That's actually a very good question. There are many KPIs floating around, right? Especially when you are working in such a big industry. But when it comes to reputation management and loyalty specifically, we try to focus on the things that actually reflect how people feel about us. Top of the list for that is, I think, obviously CSAT, especially for high impact contacts. If someone's reaching out about something frustrating and still ends the interaction feeling heard and taken care of, that tells me we're actually on a good path. And you can see that on the CSAT stats.
Mhm.
I also like to keep a close eye on sentiment trends, not just the score itself, but what's driving it, like where is it coming from. A single patch or support misstep can shift the tone from a positive one to a totally negative one, or in the best case scenario, from a totally negative one to a positive one. So that's why I believe it's very important to keep track of that also. Then there's also response time, which we've covered a bit earlier. I like to look at it in context mostly because I do believe that speed matters, but quality of the reply matters as well. So it's kind of a balance. How fast are we replying, and how well are we actually solving the situation? And that's where first contact resolution comes in. It's another KPI. If we are both fast and right, and that in the end builds trust with the players. So again, overall, I would say CSAT, sentiment scores, response time, or I know it's also called the average handling time, and first contact resolution. I think would be top of my list.
Mhm. Yeah, and I would absolutely agree. And I want to just follow up quickly to what you mentioned about that actual resolution time and that kind of first resolution time. I think that one is quite important, especially when we talk about support. Some teams will exclusively focus on just giving that first quick response, no matter what it is. And that can even, in some cases, it's not really going to be beneficial if you just have a quick response in like, hey, for an example, and then you leave them hanging for hours to come.
Exactly.
So it's definitely not a best practice. And what you want to do is, yes, reply quickly and keep an eye on the speed, but you want that to actually make sense and be beneficial to the user. I think also, when we talk about the KPIs, some companies sometimes can kind of get lost in the what are KPIs important for us and not that much what KPIs will be important for us, but also beneficial to our users. And there's a balance, to be had here and to, discuss about that. Of course, we're going to have our internal metrics, but we do also need to think about what's also relevant for our customers. And what you also mentioned about the sentiment, we kind of call that the reply effect in AppFollow, which is essentially kind of the increase or improvement in the original ratings that have happened after the agents have engaged with specific reviews. This is also one of the metrics that will kind of show you how things have been going, also from the agent point of view and support performance overall, but also the actual resolution. And this is where, it really goes hand in hand, quickness of the response and then implementation of that feedback. And how, when those two work together, this is when you will see what you can see here on the screen, that increase of 1 point stars after actually responding. But of course, it's necessary for these two aspects to work together as a team, let's say.
I have one more thing to add regarding the KPIs. Um, in my opinion, reputation in itself, like your app reputation, it doesn't even need to be a game necessarily, is very fragile. It takes a very long time to build and only one bad experience to crack. So
Okay.
in general, I think it's less about chasing perfect numbers when it comes to KPIs, but more about listening what's behind those KPIs and spotting signals early and showing the players that we actually care and are trying to get it right. So I think, just to sum up, it's again not about chasing perfection or hitting that KPI target. It's in the end all about the loyalty that we are trying to bring to those players.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% would agree. I don't really have anything to add. It wouldn't make sense to add anything on top of this. So I absolutely agree with everything you just said. Okay, so let's in that case talk a bit about our final main topic for today. Let's say, which is of course the AI. This is a change that has really impacted the industry overall. I think support teams specifically. There's a lot of agents, tools that can help with the whole process, how to do it. There's a lot of polar opinions on this. Is it good? Is it bad? When to use it? When to not use it? So I want to again hear a bit from you. What do you think? When can the AI be, or will it ever be, kind of assistance in the support team?
And I think AI is already changing the game when it comes to player support in general, or maybe even customer support in general. It's the talk of the town recently, AI, and how, if at all, can it help us be better and support our players better. I think it's only just getting started. Like, I don't think we've seen what AI will be able to do for us in the future. For us at this time, AI has been a huge help with scaling smartly. We use things that I believe I mentioned earlier as well, things like auto tagging, routing the tickets in the correct categories and to the right teams, or even generating draft replies for our more common issues.
Mm-hmm.
It frees up a lot of a lot of time for our human agents to actually focus on more complex stuff. And when I say complex, I'm talking more about the emotional things, which us humans are best at. And that's where where I've seen that they really shine. We use AI as a support tool for our human agents. So we are not looking for AI to replace that human touch in any way. We use it more as a supporting tool for our agents to be better and to be able to for them to support the players in a more efficient way. I think it's a very thin line where you might, if you cross it, then maybe you will let go of your authenticity. But for us specifically, authenticity is a non-negotiable. No matter how big we will grow, no matter how much we will scale, authenticity will remain an integral part of our of the support that we are offering. So again, I think AI is great in general, and again, it's a very great tool for support teams to get to the bottom of the situations faster. But in the end, it's the humans that actually give heart to everything that we do. And to be honest, and I think you maybe see this as well in your other interactions with various support teams in other services, you can tell when it's an automated bot or a genuine, authentic person. It's noticeable. And that kind of genuine connection that you can create with a human cannot be replaced by AI. So again, in the end, I think it's very helpful for us to be able to assist our players faster and maybe better prepared. But it's the genuine connection that you get with a human that cannot be replaced, and I don't think it will ever be replaced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and once again, I feel like you've kind of just hit the spot. I would definitely agree. I think there's a lot of talk, maybe even nervousness around AI taking somebody's job and so on. I definitely feel 100% it's a really good assistant in reduction of some of the manual and admin stuff we would have to do before. So to me, it's a really good help in that whole kind of process, and it can definitely, as you said, remove some of that work that you don't really need to do, and it's going to allow the person to focus on something that's more human related. So it will definitely, from my point of view, it gives a really good competitive edge to anybody that uses it. And of course, if they use it in an appropriate and meaningful way, there's of course a different part of the story where you try to offload everything to AI. It's not the way to go. As you said, I think it's very
Exactly.
noticeable, and you can definitely see when you're not talking to a person. It can also create a lot of frustration from the user. So it's a really, kind of touchy-feely topic. But when you kind of hit that spot nicely with the balance between the agent and the I definitely think it's kind of like a perfect combo.
I know it's kind of a, let's say, controversial topic. I don't like to look at it necessarily that way. Again, I like to see it as something that will just help us grow and be better in the end at what we are already doing successfully.
Mhm.
So, again, it's not necessarily a bad thing or again something that will come and replace our jobs. I think it will in the end just help us be better at what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely agree. Okay, so we have kind of covered this first part of the presentation or topic overall. I want us to dive right now into the Q&A portion of things. So as I mentioned, we have gotten several questions beforehand. So we're going to be covering those first. As I said, I've left them exactly as they were submitted, just so everybody who has submitted them, they know what's been going on. So I want us to go through these. We'll see then how much time we have left to cover the chat. And if not, as I mentioned, we will be sending all of the responses and follow-ups to everybody after the session. Okay, so first question was how to make the players see we take into consideration their feedback and actually address it. So this one we actually already covered through our conversation and through the session. So Madlina, maybe I can let you maybe kind of rephrase or wrap up what you've mentioned before around this.
Sure, I believe I actually have something to add that I'm not sure I mentioned. How to make players see that we take into consideration their feedback. We tell them. The idea of we listened and we did is, I think, the best one that you can do in these situations. We do try to showcase to our players whenever we make any change that's directly coming from their feedback, that it is coming from their feedback.
Mm-hmm.
If we reply to reviews or to tickets one by one, we tell them, hey, we actually made this change because you mentioned it or because you spotted it for us. So again, I think it's best to tell them and to be open about it.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think as soon as they see some kind of engagement, this is already telling that somebody is looking into this and the feedback is being acknowledged. If we are talking about some kind of crisis situation, what's also kind of a good tip maybe to do, we also kind of touched upon that briefly. If you have a crisis on your hand, acknowledge it initially, but also when you have the resolution done, do go back, do update them on what's been resolved. Some teams will even go an extra length and even ask for reconsideration of the original review and the rating. So there's different ways and you can do this. It all depends, of course, on the context, on the topic, and everything. But there are definitely ways to go that extra mile, which will not take a lot of time, but it can have a really big benefit for your overall results.
I because you touched on that point, I just want to make like another quick note of this. I just like based on again my experience with replying to reviews specifically, we did see many reviews which were initially 1 star or 2, and they went and they changed it after we addressed the situation. Like we see it happening. It's even happening today. It's very powerful. It's
Mhm.
a very powerful thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can also speak, on behalf of all of the other teams I work with. It's a very common thing for teams that really have put thought into the strategy. When they have a crisis on their hand, when they don't have a crisis on their hand, how they will, manage this kind of feedback will definitely have an impact. And in 90% of the cases, you can see the overall increase of the original ratings they have left. Okay, so let's move on to other questions. The second and third are kind of tied together in the sense of users don't wanting to leave detailed feedback. Um, from my point of view, this of course depends on the review, but it's also okay. It's not necessary for all of them to leave super detailed feedback. There's also a way to manage this. If we have some more sensitive topics where we don't actually even want them to share a lot of it in the stores, you can always direct them to a different channel, to your support emails, ticketing system, whatever you have, and request more detailed feedback there. So this is one of the options you can do. As I said, we also need to accept the fact that sometimes users simply don't want to share all of the details. If they're frustrated, they might just share the frustration and that's it. Unfortunately, it's something to accept, but this is how things go sometimes. So in these cases, again, what's very important is to kind of have that, response strategy crafted appropriately. So the acknowledgement, of course, is one thing, but the other is, as I said, if it's a more sensitive thing, direct them to a more private, place. Keep in mind, reviews are public. Everybody can see them, and it's not also always appropriate to ask a super detailed feedback in the stores publicly. So depending on the case, there's definitely a case where you can kind of, redirect them to a different channel. And I want to just, quickly refer to the second portion of the third question. This can very much depend on how things were done, internally in this questionnaire, let's call it. So for this one, I would actually prefer to have a bit more, information so we can be a bit more concrete. We can reach out directly and connect directly to discuss this portion of the question. But the feedback, it's still relevant to what we have discussed and what I mentioned before. So I want to ask Madeline if you maybe have anything to add here.
Just one small mention. You mentioned something regarding the frustration, because sometimes indeed players just want to vent and leave their frustrations out if it's something that it's been piling up. I think it's like this is where smart categorization and summary comes into play, because what's very important when it comes to frustration is to be able to read to that frustration and see what feedback can I get from this, because behind the words which are usually angry, there is a person who is telling you what would make them feel more appreciated and what would make them stay with your app or game. So again, I think it's this is where the sentiment and the smart categorization of feedback comes to play, because it can give you a better understanding of what is behind that specific sad face.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely agree with that. Okay, going to the next one. A lot of one-star reviews due to paid content. Also, if you have paid content, you will definitely have feedback around that. There's no way to avoid it. It definitely depends on the volume, of course. If the majority of your feedback is one-star reviews and they complain about the content, paid content, I mean, then there is something to, restructure internally. You might want to reconsider your subscription model. You might want to reconsider how many things are actually paid. You might want to, offload some things to the free portion of your game, and then portion can be paid. This is again definitely, a balance in what you do. But if you have anything that's paid in the app, from experience, 100% you will always have feedback around that. It's normal. As I said, it shouldn't go, above a certain percentage, and it shouldn't be, your reviews shouldn't be 50% one stars for sure. That is indicated that something is not exactly going well. But the paid content or paid features, you will definitely have, complaints around that. So yeah, this is more or less, what I wanted to share here. Madalina, do you maybe have anything else you want to add?
Yes, I just want to reinforce what you mentioned. Indeed, if you have in-app store options, paid content basically, then there is like 100% you will get one-star reviews because of that. And it's kind of like, let's say, calculated risk. And what's important here is it's great to try to find ways to limit those types of reviews, but I think the best approach to them is to act on them heads on. And again, as Lucia mentioned, most of the time, not all of the content is to be purchased. It's not all of it paid content. So maybe the best solution here is to actually advertise all of the functionalities that aren't free to play or to use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, our next question it's around the numbers in community categorization and how those can be utilized in the kind of business cases. So this one, I feel like Madalena, you have already covered. Actually, we have talked about this. Maybe just to kind of quickly reiterate, having the numbers, if you want to do that, the best way is to categorize the feedback that you have. Usually through tagging, it will be the best way. If you can do it automatically, that's of course ideal. You want to offload that kind of manual work from your agents. But these are then the numbers that you can present to other teams. It's also a very common question. Product development teams, they love to see the numbers. Yes, they care about the feedback, but just having that qualitative data is not going to do it. It's not going to cut it for them. So we definitely need to share the actual numbers behind, for example, specific issues. You want to be able to say we had 20% of our users complaining about the latest app update, for example. And then this will kind of help you, of course, with that internal communication.
In this direction, I like to say that, if you see three reviews or three complaints kind of saying the same thing, then it gets interesting, like, okay, maybe that's something worth looking into. But if it's already like over 50, 100, then that becomes a trend that it's worth bringing forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we are almost through these. So being able to manage and sort through thousands of comments each day on social media. So we are here talking mainly about the stores. So it's a bit of a different breed than social media for sure. When we talk about the sorting, I will speak, for the stores specifically. When you have a system like, for example, AppFollow, you can have that easily done through the filtering possibilities. So there's a lot of systems in place within the tool that will allow you to just focus and check the things that are relevant. Again, for example, having that categorization and tagging done, you will then have that statistical overview. And then based on that, you can see, okay, maybe I can focus on this initially. So for stores, that will be kind of the way to go. If you have a system that allows you to filter things, definitely, do that. In AppFollow, for example, some of you maybe even know, we have presets, which are essentially, already saved sets of filters. So you don't even have to filter anymore. And the tagging, which will then show you the data, the numbers based on which you can then kind of decide what the next steps will be. Okay, our next one is around differentiating between real feedback that will improve the value of the product and the majority of the user base versus the one that's only shared by the small number. Again, we had a similar question. We touched upon this topic already. From my point of view, having a full picture of categorization, once you have that done, once you have the numbers, you will very easily be able to see what you should actually focus on. And of course, this, as Madalena has mentioned in the past, if you have good categorization system and good kind of tagging labelment done, it's very easy then to see, okay, we have that percentage of general feedback. Right now, we don't really care about that, but we had this percentage of this concrete issue. We can easily go and focus on that. But, for that, you need to have that feedback categorized into appropriate groups. You need to have that labeled correctly. And then it's very easy to understand where you are and what next steps should be taken. Okay, and then we have first response time and optimization. So in this case, if we're talking about automation overall, you will definitely need a tool that will, help with the setup overall. Again, this might be, a bit vague for me to be able to specifically focus on what the question was, but the automation, when we're talking about that in general, again, systems like AppFollow will allow you to do a certain portion of your work automatically. So you can reply. This will also then impact your first response time because, of course, these systems are much quicker usually than the agents. So this will be what I would generally say about this topic. As I said, I might be lacking some context. So we're going to be reaching out, as I said, directly for the questions that are kind of this type. And then the last two would actually be, similar in that area. It's a bit, lacking in the context overall. I feel like for us to be able to provide really, concrete and specific information when talking about data collection, again, if you have a system in place like AppFollow or anything that's similar where you can pull all of that information, of course, it's then much easier because everything lives in a single place. So it's much more easier to manage everything. And user acquisition, it's a quite big topic. This is the only one I would say that we've had here that really talks both about, review management, but also ASO as a whole. So it would be interesting to understand specifically which kind of point is lacking here. But as I said, we will be reaching out directly so we can tackle these topics as well. So this is everything we had from our topics. I will need to check the chat if we have anything. I haven't been looking at it so far. Before we go into that, just a very quick note. With the follow-up, you will also receive the ebook we have done, with which we have used to kind of pull some stats you've seen today. And we also have a new one coming, I think even during this week, if not during this week, then during next, about some of the benchmarks for 2025. Okay, so let's then see if we had anything in our chat. Sorry, I will need to now read through this a bit. Just bear with me for a second. How do we use AppFollow for a fitness app that just launched? We need leads. Okay, so if the goal is to acquire leads, overall, I'm not sure if this person is still here. If we're talking about, I would say this is again a question of user acquisition a bit, or maybe generating overall new users here. I'm not sure, as I said, if this might be a question of the sales funnel overall or already kind of like for the customer base. In any case, with AppFollow, what you can definitely see, and as I said, this will be more, I feel like, an ASO related question. ASO, I mean App Store Optimization. First step, of course, can be understanding what your existing users are telling you. We would need to understand how the app is positioning currently. So what the ranking is, how does the app rank within the specific category, what the feedback is. Based on that, we can see what specific issues might be going on that might be resolvable. But also we would need to dive into topics like improvement potentially of the keywords that you're using right now, of the screenshots, of the visuals. So this would all be kind of a portion of that kind of acquisition part that you could or should be doing. For this, I would actually again love to connect directly. It's a pretty big topic, so let's then connect after also our call. As I said, we'll be reaching out so we can have more kind of ample discussion around that. Okay, our next question. Apple shows you the feedback review only after 1-2 days, and the reply from developer also takes 1-2 days. Know that it takes too long on iOS. I think it's very hard to respond quickly on iOS. Once you get feedback and you want to change something on the app, it takes days to test, and Apple takes own sweet time to approve it generally. Yeah, so this is more of I mean, I would definitely agree. It sounds more like a statement than a question to me. Maybe one thing to mention that could be relevant, this, we call it moderation time, that you have, so that delay. Once you actually receive the reviews from the users, when you see it in your developer console, they are actually not yet public in the stores. So once it goes through moderation time, even if it's 1-2 days, it's gonna be public. It's gonna be public kind of after that, and then it's not gonna be showing to the users during that time frame. Okay, I think this is then everything we've had for today. Okay, if any questions pop up, feel free to share them, of course. You have our contacts, you know how to reach out, so feel free to do so. We will be sharing, as I said, the recording and the responses to some of the questions additionally. I want to thank you once again, Madalina, for joining us today, for sharing all of the insights, your feedback. I feel like it's been, quite useful and interesting.
Mhm.
And that will be it for today. I want to thank everybody for joining, and I hope you have a nice rest of the day.
Thank you. Thank you as well, Lucia.
Thank you. Bye.